Now, joining us is Patrick Henningsen, an Infowars.com investigative journalist. And he's been out in Arizona investigating fast and furious. More furious is the headline. U.S. soldiers trafficked arms, drugs to DEA agents posing as Los Zetas. Now, if you guys can pull it up again, the El Paso Times about drug cartels allowed to bring in tons of cocaine by ATF. All this is coming out in court because one arm doesn't know what the other arm's doing, so they'll bust these groups, or U.S. troops will get caught at the border with machine guns. They get arrested. They blow the whistle and go, I work for the government. Turns out they are working for the government, a secret op. It comes out in court. Then the government goes, well, we were just posing as Los Zetas. We'll put that article on screen. More furious. U.S. soldiers trafficked arms, drugs to DEA agents posing as Los Zetas. What did I tell you 6 years ago with our sources? There was going to be or 7 years ago now, a massive implosion in Mexico as they knocked out the other small cartels that aren't controlled by J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Wachovia, which, by the way, it's come out now, hundreds of billions laundered by Wells Fargo, didn't get in trouble, Bloomberg, AP, Reuters. Again, this is how they operate. Just like Goldman Sachs, sex trafficking. UN, sex trafficking. Well, they have diplomatic immunity. So it's okay. And if you scroll down on the article, you can see 3 of the gentlemen who were reportedly hitmen with the U.S. military. What have I told you over and over again? It's mainly Army. There are tens of thousands of wet work hitmen. And it's not the Mexican mafia. It's not any of these groups. It's U.S. Army, then some Marines, then some Navy SEALs. They busted Navy SEALs trying to ship hand grenades, rocket launchers, and weapons out of Phoenix down there. Turned out they were working for the government. There's a covert war, and that's a message to you. If you work for the U.S. government, which means Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and you're caught, they're just going to say you're a drug dealer. Okay? Now, all this has come out in court. When they bust Los Zetas, when they bust Sinaloa, shipping in tons of cocaine, they always say, well, here's my national security letter. I work. Here's their names. And Homeland Security comes in and says, it's true, national security on the trial. And they say, that's inadmissible. You're still going to prison. And they're like, we worked for you. They're like, once you hit prison, we're going to have you shanked to death, okay? But I worked for you. I did everything. And they're like, hey, no honor among thieves. Just like the people that got caught torturing, Bush had him sent to prison, even though he'd ordered the torturing in the memos. Then he wrote a book admitting he ordered the torture. I'm going to order the torture, and if you happen to get caught doing it, raping little kids like they had them doing, that's in the handbooks now. That's what Land of the Free, Home of the Brave does, run by Goldman Sachs, is rape children with battery acid. Go read it in the Army's report. Go read it. This is the hardcore, pure evil you're dealing with. Okay? Now setting up domestic checkpoints, hardened checkpoints, set to pass a bill that you can't travel, and it's going to be internally. I've read their plans. I've warned you. There are UN signs now, UN subgroups up in baby blue and white at our greenbelts in Austin. The private property they're stealing has them up. They're putting fences and cameras aimed out at the invasive humans. Okay? I'm living it. 80% increase in power prices they announced for the earth, really just to the foreign bankers. I'm living it. You're going to live it. I'm here to break your trance. Admit it. Admit the government's not legitimate and it's pure evil. Admit it. Admit it before it's too late. Admit it. Say no. We've got to go to grassroots. We've got to start going to underground economy. We've got to start just banner hangs everywhere, info war everywhere, whatever you got to do to get the word out and shake people out of the trance. I am ordering the info warriors. If you care about your family and your life, you better launch operations peacefully in total resistance to the New World Order now. We got John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, coming up in the third hour. Right now is Patrick Henningsen joining us with this big breaking news with links to the federal court rulings and even little blurbs in mainstream media. Patrick Henningsen, incredible information. We already knew it, but here it is in plain view as we learn the government's arming the drug gangs domestically. You got military hit teams everywhere, mass slaughter, sex trafficking, just pure evil, 110%. Break it down for us.
This whole story, when I first stumbled across this a few days ago, it's like a rabbit hole. It's like a supermarket crime novel, only that it's actually happening. This is the most incredible thing about it. So what you've got here is a freelance hit squad made up of active duty U.S. Army and a couple of his close relations, and this is between South Carolina and Texas, okay? And this guy isn't a member of just any Army brigade. It turns out he's a member of the 4th Brigade of the 4th Infantry Group. So he's a member of the 4th Brigade Combat Team of the 4th Infantry Division, okay? And they're doing three-year cycles together as a unit. And you know, we all know about the opium problem in Afghanistan. You've covered it really well. In fact, between Kurt Nimmo and myself, it's really hard to find any really comprehensive writing on this subject in the last 2 years. So I've linked to some of Kurt Nimmo's research on this because, frankly, there's no one really wants to talk about it very much, aside from Infowars.com and a few other outlets. But we all know about the opium. Now, this guy, Kevin Corley, arranged a 500-pound marijuana shipment, which the DEA apparently picked up early in this sting. They didn't arrest these guys. They let them drive forward. They caught the truck behind them with 500 pounds of marijuana. Okay, 500 pounds of marijuana. Okay, where the flag went up for me is, and I can't obviously prove this, but certainly we have links with Afghanistan. Guess who the #1 marijuana producing country in the world today is? Take a wild guess. It's Afghanistan. It's not Mexico. It's not Jamaica. It's Afghanistan. So,
and of course, it wasn't until the liberation happened, and it was only 10% of opium. Now it's 92% or more of the opium, and the troops admit they grow it.
Yeah, and you know, you've got some big Air Force, military Air Force and Army and Marine bases dotted all over the country. And we all know from Vietnam that the longer we stayed in there, in Vietnam for between 10 and 12 years, and that allowed people to make links to form relationships for certain cadres within the military to arrange their own kind of entrepreneurial activities. Okay, and that's not out of the realms of possibility in this particular situation. Did this 500 pounds of pot come from Mexico, or did it come from Arizona to, say, Fort Bliss or a place like this? I can't say for sure. But I've laid this all out, Alex, because I think hopefully someone else is going to come along and put the dots together. I'm limited in what I can find out as far as...
This is exactly the intel we get from these other federal cases where they let Los Zetas and Sinaloa ship cocaine in, quote, for information.
Sure. I mean, I did an article a couple of years ago which was called Rendition, where the war on drugs meets the war on terror. And that was really centered around that whole story of the CIA rendition flight. Was a Gulfstream jet, which crashed in Mexico and had something like 3 tons of pure Colombian uncut cocaine on board.
Yeah, 3.5 tons.
Yeah, and so they matched the tail numbers from this Gulfstream jet with the private air contractor to rendition flights that were going everywhere on the planet. We're talking about black sites in Eastern Europe, refueling in England and Ireland.
No, that's it. The government aircraft just land everywhere with the cocaine, heroin, little kids, and it all comes out. Just type in UN, child sex trafficking, because sometimes there are good people that blow the whistle when there's huge C-130s with toddlers being loaded on, and there's always somebody who freaks out. They usually whack them real quick. So, I mean, it's just absolute pure evil.
That's what the war on terror was in the early stages of the war on terror, where they were rendering. The media made a big deal, and the liberal kind of outcry was, oh, they're taking all these terrorists on and putting black sacks over their heads and ferrying them around the world. But it wasn't the terrorists that they were ferrying around. They were just goat herders and taxi drivers. There were drugs, kids, and God knows what on board any of those.
That's right. Stay there. The guy that wrote Jawbreaker, I had the CIA section chief on. He admitted they would only grab innocent people. And literally, it was just a prop to ship the drugs. Continue with this report. Because I mean, break down what's happened, how this came to light briefly, then let's come back again into more, the latest developments on Fast and Furious.
Well, this particular federal complaint was just put online a couple of days ago, and quite a few blogs and so forth jumped on it. Now, this is a really fascinating story. You've got, obviously, a couple of active duty U.S. military. Now, something strange happened. They were due to be redeployed to Afghanistan in February, and Kevin Corley, who is one of the leaders of this gang, was discharged from Fort Carson, which is where the 4th Brigade is stationed. Now, there's no details as to why he was discharged. Okay, there's also another question which looms here is that when you lose a 500-pound consignment of narcotics and you just hand it over to the DEA and they let you drive along while they take the truck. And then he's gone back to the guys who were posing as Los Zetas, these undercover DEA agents, to do more business soon after that. So it's almost like there was no big deal. We lost 500 pounds of pot. So it makes you wonder, is there an endless supply of drugs here?
Well, that's what happens when one hand doesn't know what the other hand is happening. But they were able to give the code word, so they let him go. And again, the feds are saying these guys were involved in wet work, murder for hire services, narcotics trafficking, and stolen U.S. military weapons. Well, what do you think your bosses in the federal government are involved in? Blowing up Oklahoma City, blowing up 9/11. Going back to investigative journalist for Infowars.com, Patrick Henningsen, who has been traveling the U.S. investigating government drug dealing. Our soldiers publicly have to guard and even help plant and give fertilizer to the Afghans to grow the opium. It's up almost tenfold. The production level from 10% to 92% is the average number. That's what the federal government predicts or estimates. Well, that's their projection, I should say. According to MSNBC, is 92%. It could be higher. Flooding the world with it. And now they just hide it in plain view. And then I've been told by military personnel and others that indeed the U.S. military is all over the border. We've seen cases where Marines, shoot some innocent U.S. citizen, who's herding sheep down in South Texas. This stuff happens. But you've got these guys who are active duty running around. And now the feds have actually grabbed them, though. Do we know why this is happening?
I think we can only guess at this point, but I'm telling you, this is a very bizarre operation, to say the least. So I predict there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be unearthed over the next few weeks or the next few months about this thing. But, the bigger picture here, Alex, is that, the mainstream media and our politicians in Washington have really made such a meal out of the whole thing of talking about the economy in terms of the stock market and in terms of derivatives and this and that. The real liquidity, Alex, and this is Catherine Austin Fitz, who's on your show many times. She pointed this out. The real liquidity, the real cash that propped up the banking sector in terms of Citibank, for one, is black market cash. And this is, they're always underestimating the size of the black market, playing it down, and you don't hear about it very much in the news, the real statistics. Why? Because you can't calculate the size of the black market because it's not audited, okay? But this black market is one of the most important aspects of how the kind of the slimy elements of the globalist cabal do their business.
That's right. They control it, and instead of cracking down on their narcotics and child kidnapping, they're going to go after the Amish and people selling pecans. They want that gone.
If you look at it, if you look at the global economy in terms of, let's call it a pyramid, okay? The military-industrial complex and the big Fortune 500 corporations, they'll form the base of this pyramid, okay? Then, you know, the amount of money and on paper it's much bigger than the black market. But at the top of this pyramid is a little black capstone, okay? This is the black market. And I contend that whoever controls the black capstone of this economic pyramid can control the whole pyramid.
I agree, because that money is worth 100 times because it is black. It is secret, and it's what's used to bribe people and to then blackmail them with the black money.
The black market is the WD-40 grease that turns the wheels of power with the shadow government and also, you know, any kind of nefarious organizations the world over. This is the grease that turns the machine. Without this, you cannot pay off judges. You cannot buy silence. You cannot buy loyalty.
And you decriminalize the drugs, it is over overnight. It'll rise up like a cold sore, and that's why top drug dealers are on record saying, I love the drug war. Never get rid of it.
Yeah, in terms of drugs, child prostitution, human trafficking, vice activity, you have all kind of vested interests around the world. That's why Ron Paul is so dangerous to the establishment. One of the reasons is he wants to legalize drugs, okay, or decriminalize drugs.
And again, that takes all the criminal element and the money out, and now poor drug heads will be, you know, doing it at home under supervision instead of robbing you to go buy the overpriced drugs so the big bankers get that money. Then they also put them in the private prisons owned by the drug dealers. We'll be right back. I really enjoy it when the globalists try to poison us, and, well, we resist them via a free market system. Hello, my fellow info warriors. Alex Jones here, introducing you to the ProPure family of gravity-fed filters. Now, you know that the globalists are filling our water with radioactive isotopes, fluoride, lead, mercury, arsenic. And one of the few systems that can efficiently and economically remove or reduce down to non-detectable levels these poisons are gravity-fed filters. And ProPure is the top of the line. Their filters are impregnated with silver, a natural antibiotic. On top of that, they're bigger, so they filter faster. You don't have to prime these the first time you use them. It's amazing. Go to Infowars.com and click on the shopping cart link to see the entire family of these babies. Now, the fluoride they add to our water is so tiny that most filters can't cut it out. But ProPure has their system that will, again, reduce it to non-detectable levels, almost get all of it out of there. That's also available. And if you look at the different systems they offer, the ProPure Big Brush Finish is on a stand, so it's easier on a table or at your restaurant or wherever you have it to go up with a glass or a mug and fill it up. Then there's this big baby right here, the ProPure King large version. Got a lot of different options that come with it. Also, they have the ProPure Big, probably one of the best values out there. And of course, it's burnished stainless steel. And then what I use on my RV, something that's great for your hunting cabin or the back porch, is the ProPure Traveler. Small and portable, but packs a huge punch, cleans out all that garbage. They also have the glass sight spigot, so you don't have to take the top off and look in the bottom area to see how much water. You can see how fast it's filtering with this optional system. The globalists obviously are hitting us through our water. It's time to take control of our lives. It's time to not give our children and families these poisons, and these systems cut it down to non-detectable levels across the board. ProPure is the name. I only promote what I believe in. And I use ProPure in my home and my office. And I recommend that you check out the information on ProPure at Infowars.com. We already have the lowest price at Infowars.com on the ProPure gravity filter system. But when you add in the 10% off when InfoWarriors use the product code WATER at Infowars.com, nobody can top it. So again, it's a win-win-win. Stop drinking the poison water. Checkmate the globalists when it comes to your health, and support Infowars.com and the work we're doing here. You know, many revolutionaries rob banks and things and kidnap people for funds. We promote in the free market the products we use that are about preparedness. That's how we fund this revolution against the New World Order in our move to restore our constitutional republic and a spirit of 1776 worldwide. Check it out at Infowars.com. ProPure, top of the line, #1, most powerful and effective and economical gravity-fed water system in the world. ProPure, available, discounted at Infowars.com. Don't forget product code WATER to save 10%. It's the latest generation, years in development. ProPure is the name. We're talking about the phony drug war with investigative journalist from Infowars.com, Patrick Henningsen. We're working on getting Lord Monckton on dealing with the environmental power grabs going on by the green cultists who are trying to seize power and are trying to censor our videos and others. Really incredible developments on that front. But here's an article out of the Huffington Post. Lawmakers in 5 states tell feds to back off medical marijuana. Remember, Obama promised that he was going to follow the 10th Amendment for states' rights and that he was going to back off medical marijuana that was prescribed by doctors, which they admit, of all the plants out there that you can get drugs from that help people, there's nothing like marijuana. And I'm not even a pot smoker. I mean, I've smoked it. I've tried it here and there. Every time I get talked into doing it, I'm like, why did I do this? It just doesn't float my boat. But regardless of that, lawmakers in 5 states tell feds to back off medical marijuana. The point is, when you make this stuff illegal, it drives up the price. It allows government behind the scenes to selectively enforce. It corrupts the police, just like alcohol prohibition did for the decade or 9.5 years that they had it in place. And when that ended, they made drugs illegal. You could buy cocaine, heroin at the corner drugstore, and much smaller numbers of people used it or took it. You think I'm joking? You can buy 6 packs of Coca-Cola that, you know, had massive amounts of cocaine in it. That's why it's called Coke. So go look it up. It's hiding in plain view. They've done this to take over our society. And Patrick Henningsen was talking about the black capstone over the larger economy of the black market, controlled by the big mega banks who launder the money. So when they come in with this cashless society, they're going to use it to crack down on the Amish and people selling peaches on the side of the road and lemonade stands and Girl Scout cookies, as they've now done. They don't want any of that. But the real black market, it will continue on. Patrick Henningsen, I want to ask you about this. You know, Obama said he wouldn't hire lobbyists, hired more than anybody else. Said he wouldn't torture, expanded it. Wouldn't have wars, expanded it. He said he'd have the most open government, most closed government. He'd honor whistleblowers and journalists. He's arresting them en masse. You know, NDAA, all of it. What do you make of this whole black market and where all this is going? Please continue to give us your take on this.
Well, firstly, let's just comment on Obama. I just wrote an article for InfoWars, I think 2 days ago, called Rise of the Petty Dictator. And what I did is kind of outlined, you know, Obama, who just a few days ago called the Supreme Court a unelected group of people, and then it kind of listed all his executive orders. If he is elected in a second term, he will actually surpass George Bush's amount of executive orders. I mean, it's record-breaking stuff.
And I want to interrupt you because I'm glad, you know, I'm so conditioned to live in this tyranny. I know they're tyrants. I know they're building FEMA camps. I know they're getting ready to set up checkpoints everywhere and now announcing it. So as it happens, now I don't even make a big deal out of things that I used to. It's actually working on me. I'm weakening. And so I'm announcing that publicly so that we can all understand it's happening to us and resist it and redouble our efforts. But I forgot. He came out and said, oh, they're just unelected. They're nobody. And started listing his executive orders. That was an open threat. Even mainline pundits said it, that he may ignore it. Just like he ignored Congress when they said no to carbon taxes. I mean, this is really happening.
I mean, many a constitutional law scholar had their jaws hanging around their ankles after a president who claims to have taught constitutional law would make such a statement. But that we've become used to this after 4 years of this president.
Yeah, he told Congress take a hike on the war.
Just like we became used to George W. Bush's shredding of the Constitution with his gang of neoconservatives over 8 years. The federal government, clearly, the amount of money they spend on things like Fast and Furious that end up killing people, the amount of waste. Another solar company was just gone bankrupt. It took a $2.1 billion guaranteed federal loan only a few days ago, another green project. They're just wasting money left, right, and center. And meanwhile, they will come at gunpoint to collect $100 worth of overdue federal income tax. So I think the federal government has kind of grown out of control, and this country is at a major crossroads right now. If we don't do something as people or as states, exert their states' rights, for instance, we're going to slide into tyranny, and we won't even know it. We're already there, actually. If you really look at things the way things have rolled out on paper, we're already in tyranny right now. But I think it can get really worse. Some of the things you mentioned earlier in the show about withholding passport privileges, that's crazy. I mean, the Soviet Union would do such things. Red China wouldn't even attempt such a thing. You know, why is the United States pushing so hard?
And by
so
the way,
fast?
it's passed the Senate. It's going to the House, and it's CBS News. And they're now saying internal checkpoints, you won't be able to travel or have a job if you're not in good standing. You've heard of no-fly list? How about a no-buy food list, or a no-travel list, or a no-have-a-job list? Folks, I'm not predicting this and then it comes true. In their white papers that we've sourced and quoted, they have said this is the plan. How did I know they're going to have hardened checkpoints that they now have, including bulletproof ones? That's in the news today because they announced it. It's an armed camp where the criminals take over and have us all at gunpoint. That's what a tyranny is.
It really became apparent when I spent a lot of time outside of the United States, as well as living and growing up here. When I came back a couple months ago, just before I came to see you in Austin, you start turning on the TV, and I didn't realize the overwhelming onslaught. It's like a full court press when you turn on the television, and to hear this president talking on a daily basis, I really felt kind of oppressed in the fact that I'm looking around and saying, why isn't anybody upset about this? Why are people not
Exactly. I was watching The Expendables this morning on the treadmill. You know, a cheesy action adventure film that Stallone produced, because I found that's the best thing to watch when I'm jogging. And normally I wouldn't watch mindless stuff like that, but it's actually good when I'm jogging. I can jog harder, longer, faster, kind of get into it. But I was watching a supposed third world country with oppression, and it was America. It was everything they're starting here, and they were describing a horrible police state in Latin America, and that's where I live. And all we have left is the old free speech and the Second Amendment, and now they say they're coming after that, and Obama, through MSNBC, is openly trying to cause a race war, editing tapes of the Zimmerman guy to make it sound like he's racist. I mean, it's even though we know it, Patrick, it's still amazing that these are real criminals. I mean, we have real criminals in charge now.
I mean, I stood there watching the press conference on the White House lawn 2 days ago with President Obama, President Calderon of Mexico, and Stephen Harper from Canada. And I listened to President Calderon lecture the American people on the fact that it's because of our guns that are going over the border that are killing people on the border towns along Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, somehow ignoring the whole fact that 30,000 guns were shipped down in Operation Fast and Furious, which was directed by the Department of Justice.
Which is
supposed to be protecting the American people. And these are causing the deaths, not gun manufacturers and gun dealers who are doing legitimate business in America, but the flip of it, right in your face, with Obama standing next to him, and probably Eric Holder in the back behind the door, smiling. I can't conceive the hypocrisy. The level of it is unbelievable.
Well, no, exactly. And we said this would happen. When Judicial Watch sued and got the SPP documents, they just got new documents where it confirms what police were already saying. They just release the illegals and give them a waiver form. again, the government selectively enforces. But getting back to this, they said in the SPP documents that from 2006, Judicial Watch sued and got in 2007, that are so important. It said we're going to use border security crises to merge the three countries. We're going to use the flu and economic collapse. And they go on to say we've got to keep this secret from the public. And it's corporate chiefs there giving all the leaders of the countries orders. Here's the corporate government. Thousands of pages I scanned over. I put the most powerful ones in my film Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement. And then here they are. 3 years ago, before Fast and Furious even broke, I said they're shipping guns to Mexico under programs, some of it had already leaked, to blame the Second Amendment later. And then even when they get caught doing it, they still go ahead with it. And here's the head of a narco-terrorist state lecturing the American people on our Second Amendment right when he's disarmed his poor people. I mean, this is incredible what we've been brought to.
And the other thing is, people should not be naive, okay? When you have a military industrial complex in this country that's grown to such proportions, because we're deploying troops all over the world in the thousands daily, okay? And throughout history, whenever a military or police state grows to a certain size, it itself within the military will become very corrupt. I used to have a friend from Uganda who was part of the Ugandan army under Idi Amin. He was a dishwasher in London, worked in a restaurant when I first moved there to study. And he told me stories of that he would, for cash, him and his buddies in his unit would take arms out of the stockade, which was the government military stockade, and they would sell arms to the Lord's Resistance Army. For cash, okay? The same thing in the Soviet Union. Half of the global black market after 1991 that flooded Africa and flooded Asia was ex-Soviet stockpiles, because their military industrial complex was just too big and too out of control. They always
eat their own country. That's what happened in Rome. The military ate its own country, and they couldn't keep the barbarians out. And that's the thing. The criminality's reached such proportions that it's going to bring the whole system down, because no one can stop anybody. It's just mad stealing everywhere.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Patrick Henningsen, I want to come back and play a clip of Geraldo Rivera going, well, they do it to fight Al-Qaeda. They grow the opium. And the troops are like, yeah, we don't like it, but it's what we got to do. Again, they have to hide it in plain view now. Hey, if you're patriotic, grow some schmack. If you just type in U.S. troops growing opium in Afghanistan, you'll get BBC, ABC, AP, Reuters video, CBS, NBC, Fox, Sky News, and it's all the same script. Because the troops were 3 years ago starting to mutiny over the fact that they were growing opium, loading it on trucks, flying it out. And this all started coming out. They had to kill Pat Tillman over it, and that kind of got embarrassing. He was writing letters home, getting ready to go public. So instead they said, hey, hide it in plain view. Well, we hate it, but Al-Qaeda will make the money if we don't grow it. And so here is Geraldo Rivera. This all came out in a 1 month period, because they've gotten slicker. Instead of just denying it, they're like, yeah, we grow the opium, and we're going to put you in a private prison owned by our banks that bring it in if we catch you using it. You see how they get money on both ends. Good businessmen. We provide them other crops. That's why the crop's up almost tenfold. But again, when you use it, you go to a jail. This is how they've made slavery legal. 7.1 million people. I said 6 million yesterday. I looked it up. It's 7.1 mil now in prison, double what China has. And on record, of the 3 or 4 big companies, they're subsidiaries of banks that launder drug money. So let me explain how this works. They make it illegal to drive the price up. So your daughters sell themselves, people rob you for the money, so the banks can get bigger profits. Then they get the zombies that use it, throw them in the jails, the prisons, working to build widgets to drive down our wages on the outside. You think China takes your jobs? How about 7.1 mil? Closing comments on this, Patrick Henningsen.
Yeah, the important thing is if Americans can take anything from this information and just switch a little light on in their head, and frankly, I don't know how Geraldo Rivera earns for $5 million a year or $10 million a year to have absolutely zero brain activity going on. But when the Taliban got their award from the United Nations in 2000 for, they did a fatwa on opium. Okay, and this idea of the Taliban uses the opium to fund their insurgency is just a little bit of propaganda that's been seeded like a meme into the minds of the West by people like Tony Blair and so forth. And the fact, just look at the 700 tons before 2001 exported, and now 8,000 tons. By the latest calculation, which was done in 2009, you're talking about, 1,000% increase or something like this, and that's just what we have on record. Okay, there is a correlation.
But the Marines have got to grow it for America and take the cancer virus shots because they support America, and if you support America, you grow the opium. Patrick Henningsen of Infowars.com, great job. Lord Christopher Monckton coming up straight ahead. Great job, my friend. We'll get more on your reports on the government hit teams in the next few days. Pass a bill that you can't travel, and it's going to be internally. I've read their plans. I've warned you. There are UN signs now, UN subgroups up in baby blue and white at our greenbelts in Austin. The private property they're stealing has them up. They're putting fences and cameras aimed out at the invasive humans. Okay, I'm living it. 80% increase in power prices they announced for the earth, really just to the foreign bankers. I'm living it. You're going to live it. I'm here to break your trance. Admit it. Admit the government's not legitimate and it's pure evil. Admit it. Admit it before it's too late. Admit it. Say no. We've got to go to grassroots. We've got to start going to underground economy. We've got to start just banner hangs everywhere, info war everywhere, whatever you got to do to get the word out and shake people out of the trance. I am ordering the info warriors. If you care about your family and your life, you better launch operations peacefully in total resistance to the New World Order now. We got John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, coming up in the third hour. Right now is Patrick Henningsen joining us with this big breaking news with links to the federal court rulings and even little blurbs in mainstream media. Patrick Henningsen, incredible information. We already knew it, but here it is in plain view as we learn the government's arming the drug gangs domestically. You got military hit teams everywhere, mass slaughter, sex trafficking, just pure evil, 110%. Break it down for us.
This whole story, when I first stumbled across this a few days ago, it's like a rabbit hole. It's like a supermarket crime novel, only that it's actually happening. This is the most incredible thing about it. So what you've got here is a freelance hit squad made up of active duty U.S. Army and a couple of his close relations, and this is between South Carolina and Texas, okay? And this guy isn't a member of just any Army brigade. It turns out he's a member of the 4th Brigade of the 4th...
the U.S. government, which means Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and you're caught, they're just going to say you're a drug dealer. Okay? Now, all this has come out in court. When they bust Los Zetas, when they bust Sinaloa, shipping in tons of cocaine, they always say, well, here's my national security letter, I work, here's their names. And Homeland Security comes in and says, it's true, national security on the trial. And they say, that's inadmissible, you're still going to prison. And they're like, we worked for you. They're like, once you hit prison, we're going to have you shanked to death, okay? But I worked for you, I did everything. And they're like, hey, no honor among thieves. Just like the people that got caught torturing, Bush had him sent to prison, even though he'd ordered the torturing in the memos. Then he wrote a book admitting he ordered the torture. I'm going to order the torture, and if you happen to get caught doing it, raping little kids like they had them doing, that's in the handbooks now. That's what Land of the Free, Home of the Brave does, run by Goldman Sachs, is rape children with battery acid. Go read it in the Army's report. Go read it. This is the hardcore, pure evil you're dealing with. Okay? Now setting up domestic checkpoints, hardened checkpoints, set to Los Zetas. What did I tell you 6 years ago with our sources? There was going to be or 7 years ago now, a massive implosion in Mexico as they knocked out the other small cartels that aren't controlled by J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Wachovia, which, by the way, it's come out now, hundreds of billions laundered by Wells Fargo, didn't get in trouble, Bloomberg, AP, Reuters. Again, this is how they operate. Just like Goldman Sachs, sex trafficking. UN, sex trafficking. Well, they have diplomatic immunity. So it's okay. And if you scroll down on the article, you can see 3 of the gentlemen who were reportedly hitmen with the U.S. military. What have I told you over and over again? It's mainly Army. There are tens of thousands of wet work hitmen. And it's not the Mexican mafia. It's not any of these groups. It's U.S. Army, then some Marines, then some Navy SEALs. They busted Navy SEALs trying to ship hand grenades, rocket launchers, and weapons out of Phoenix down there. Turned out they were working for the government. There's a covert war. And that's a message to you if you work for the Now, joining us is Patrick Henningsen, an Infowars.com investigative journalist. And he's been out in Arizona investigating Fast and Furious. More furious is the headline. U.S. soldiers trafficked arms, drugs to DEA agents posing as Los Zetas. Now, if you guys can pull it up again, the El Paso Times about drug cartels allowed to bring in tons of cocaine by ATF. All this is coming out in court because one arm doesn't know what the other arm's doing, so they'll bust these groups, or U.S. troops will get caught at the border with machine guns. They get arrested. They blow the whistle and go, I work for the government. Turns out they are working for the government in a secret op. It comes out in court. Then the government goes, well, we were just posing as Los Zetas. We'll put that article on screen. More furious. U.S. soldiers trafficked arms, drugs to DEA agents posing